It came by accident. That's what made it sting more. I was halfway through slicing a pear when I saw it. The company-wide email about the retirement gala. A fancy venue downtown. Dress code, cocktail formal. A list of honorees. Speeches, wine pairings, jazz quartet. My name wasn't on it. 32 years. I refreshed the email, scrolled again, checked the attachments. No mention. I didn't say anything. Not right away. Just stared at the glowing screen while the pear browned on the counter and the refrigerator hummed behind me like nothing had shifted. But something had. It was subtle, like the moment a room goes cold. The email wasn't even sent directly to me. It landed in my inbox because I still shared the admin distro group, the last remnant of a role I no longer held but hadn't quite been erased from. My thumb hovered over the delete key. Instead, I drafted a reply. Just one line. Wasn't sure if I needed to RSVP. I even added a smiley face. HR answered 2 hours later. Polite. Precise. Thank you for reaching out. This event is reserved for current staff only. We appreciate your understanding. Understanding. That word. I sat in silence for a long time, hands curled around a lukewarm cup of tea. I'd organized 37 birthdays, 5 office moves, 2 holiday parties no one thanked me for. I'd brought tissues to people's desks when their kids got into college. I'd stayed late to fix formatting before a big presentation. Once, I rewrote a speech for the regional VP who couldn't spell initiative. And now I was. What? Too retired to invite, but close enough to still get the email by mistake. I didn't reply. I made a reservation. Same restaurant, same night, table for 1, across the hall. When I booked it, the hostess asked if it was a special occasion. I paused, then said, "Yes, it is." I didn't explain. They didn't ask. It was 2 years before the email. Maybe 3. I remember because it was a Wednesday. The day they always ordered pastries from that place downtown. The one with the too sweet frosting and cardboard boxes that smelled like almonds. I'd brought in a lemon tart, homemade. Nothing fancy, just something I enjoyed baking when my hands weren't too stiff. It was cut into perfect slices, each one topped with a bit of zest and a fork resting nearby. I left it in the break room with a sticky note. Help yourself, made with love. I didn't sign it. They used to know it was mine by the plate, the blue one with the faded rim and tiny chip at the side. Someone had once called it charming. That was back when they still noticed things like that. That day, the tart sat untouched for hours. At 10:45, I walked past the break room again. The corner table was piled with pink boxes and balloons. A sign read, "Happy birthday, Jenna." Someone had printed it in bold Comic Sans and taped it to the coffee maker. Jenna had been there a year and a half. Young, full of ideas, loud laugh that echoed even through glass. They'd gotten her a crown, a plastic one from the party store, the kind with rhinestones that never quite catch the light right. She wore it, smiling too big, and snapped selfies, while the others clapped and sang off-key. I stood at the doorway with my mug in hand. Someone looked over and said, "Oh, hi, Mary. We saved you a slice." I blinked. Of what? They pointed to the frosted sheet cake. Vanilla with raspberry filling. Store-bought. The kind that leaves a chemical burn on your tongue if you're not careful. I glanced at the tart. Still whole. Still quiet. Still mine. "Oh," I said. "Thank you." I stepped in, took the smallest piece I could, then excused myself before they finished the second verse of Happy Birthday. No one noticed when I left. Back at my desk, the cake clung to the fork in clumps. I took one bite and pushed it aside. At lunch, I washed the blue plate, dried it with a paper towel, and tucked it back into my tote bag. The lemon tart went home with me. I ate a slice with chamomile tea and the evening news. It tasted better without the crown. It wasn't the cake. It wasn't the crown. It was the fact that no one asked me to sign the card. No one asked me to come early. No one remembered that I'd been the one to set up these birthdays before the new girl knew where the bathroom was. It wasn't cruel, not really. Just forgetful in that way that only happens once you've become furniture. That was the first time I realized they'd stopped asking what I thought. They still said good morning, still waved at the copier, but they no longer paused at my desk for advice. No more, "Hey Mary, can you double-check this?" No more, "What do you think?" I'd become background. Reliable, punctual, predictable, invisible. And somehow, that felt worse than being disliked. It happened like most things do when you're not paying attention. Slowly, quietly, and without anyone meaning harm. It began with the coffee spoon. A small silver one, bent slightly at the handle. I'd used it every morning for years, ever since we started keeping real grounds in the break room instead of those brittle packets no one liked. I'd bought a jar of hazelnut creamer myself, labeled it "Office, Please Share," and tucked it behind the tea boxes. But one morning, the spoon was gone. I looked twice, then again, then once more under the paper towel roll and next to the sugar jar. It wasn't there. No one had stolen it. That's not how things worked here. Someone had just reorganized. The drawer was suddenly full of mismatched plastic stirrers and compostable wooden sticks that splintered if you weren't careful. I asked Jenna. She was the one who'd revamped the space for Earth Day. "Oh," she said, bright and breathless. "We're going all eco now. Didn't you see the memo?" I hadn't. She blinked. "Oh, maybe it went to the new thread." New thread? She meant the new staff email chain, the one I was no longer included in. I nodded like it didn't matter. But I still missed that spoon. It had a weight to it, a little tug of memory each time it stirred. The next day, the creamer was gone too, replaced by almond milk, unsweetened. I drank my coffee black. It's funny what you start to notice once you become background, like how no one signs off their emails anymore. No more "Best Jen" or "Thanks, Steve." Just floating sentences with no names, no hellos, no goodbyes. Or how the office music changed. No more soft jazz or instrumental classics. Now it was playlists with names like Vibes for Visionaries and Rise and Grind. I miss the quiet. I missed when people paused long enough to hear themselves think. And me? I started leaving early. Not by much. 10 minutes, maybe 15. No one noticed. I didn't do it out of spite. I just didn't see the point of staying late anymore. No one asked me to proofread their reports. No one left files on my desk with little sticky notes that said, "When you have a sec." Those notes used to mean something. Now my inbox was empty most days. Lunch used to be a shared ritual. Back when Terrence was still in payroll and Diane brought her husband's potato salad and Tupperware, we'd all take turns rotating seats, telling stories that no one really listened to, but everyone pretended to care about. Now, lunch was a row of backs, hunched over phones, earbuds in, door half closed. I still brought my sandwich, turkey on wheat, light mustard, and a sliced pickle in wax paper. But I started eating it at my desk. Not because I was unwelcome, just not invited. One afternoon, I printed out a spreadsheet that someone had clearly messed up. Formulas misaligned, columns duplicated. It would have taken 10 minutes to fix. I brought it to Paul, the new operations lead. He barely looked up from his screen. "Oh, that's from Jenna. You can just send it back to her." "I thought I'd fix it," I said. "It'll only take a minute." He shook his head, smiling distractedly. "Nah, better to let her own it." "Thanks though, Mary." "Thanks though." That word stuck. My name on the directory plaque outside the office door had once been printed cleanly. Mary Langford, Administrative Director. Now it read, Mary L., in half-faded font. The rest had peeled away, curling slightly at the edges. I used to reprint those when they faded. Keep everything tidy. I didn't anymore. At home, the habits lingered. I still set the coffee maker at 6:30 a.m. sharp. Still fed the cat, wiped down the sink, pressed my clothes for the next day. But even there, I felt thinner somehow, like a version of myself printed on tissue paper. The mail came, mostly coupons and insurance updates. The phone rang less. I answered the calls I knew, ignored the ones I didn't. Some nights, I sat with my journal open, pen in hand, and wrote a single word. Still here, not out of despair, not even sadness, just record keeping. A way to know I hadn't disappeared completely. Not yet. The first day I stayed late wasn't my first day on the job. But it was the first time I felt like I belonged. It was 1991. The fax machine had jammed. The copier kept printing crooked, and someone had spilled half a bottle of whiteout on a requisition form that still needed to be filed before morning. The office smelled like toner and takeout. It was a mess, the kind of chaos that makes new hires think they'll never survive. But I'd offered to stay. "I can finish this," I said, gently peeling apart carbon copies and tapping staples into place. "Really, I don't mind." They hesitated. Back then, they didn't just let people stay late. Overtime was tracked, signed off, approved in triplicate. But Linda, the head of admin then, a sturdy woman with clipped vowels and kind eyes, looked at me and nodded once. "All right," she said, "but just this once." I smiled, sat back down, and worked until the building was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels earned, not empty. I didn't have my own office then, just a desk near the window with a pot of ivy that refused to grow and a coffee mug that said, "World's okayest secretary." It was a joke gift from my sister. I still have it, though the lettering's long since faded. But that desk, it was mine. People stopped by, asked things, trusted me to remember their kids' names, their deadlines, their coffee orders. For the first time in years, I felt useful in a way that wasn't about motherhood or survival. I was seen. There was a day, maybe 5 months into the job, when Linda pulled me aside before the morning meeting. "I wanted to say," she said, "you've made this place run smoother than it ever has." She handed me a small box. Inside, a fountain pen with my initials etched in silver. "I thought you deserved something with permanence," she said, "something with weight." I didn't know what to say. I still have that pen. I keep it in the top drawer of my dresser, nestled beside old birthday cards and the earrings my husband gave me on our 15th anniversary. That pen wrote hundreds of memos, signed dozens of checks. edited speeches for people who now pass me in the hallway without looking up. We used to have staff lunches, real ones, not just grab a sandwich and sit in silence kind of things. We'd push the tables together, potluck style. Someone always brought meatballs, someone else a tray of deviled eggs, and I, more often than not, brought lemon bars. People would groan in delight when I walked in with the pan. "You're spoiling us," Terrence would say, already reaching for a square before his plate was full. "I like feeding people," I'd reply. "Keeps me grounded." There was laughter back then. Inside jokes. Holiday gift exchanges that took weeks to plan because everyone wanted the right name. We made paper snowflakes and strung lights around the front desk. We cared. About each other. About the place. About the work. One year, my birthday fell on a Friday. They brought in a cake, marble, my favorite. Candles, a card signed by everyone, even the finance director, who always pretended not to know anyone's name. Linda stood beside me as they sang, and when the candles flickered low, she leaned in. "Make a wish," she said. I did. I wished to stay. Now I sit in the same building, newer paint, younger faces, colder lights, and wonder if anyone remembers those lemon bars. If anyone knows the blue pot on the front desk is one I brought in from my own garden. If they've noticed that the ivy I once nursed has been replaced by a plastic fern. Sometimes I wonder if Linda ever felt this way before she left. If she saw herself fading, the way a photograph does when it sits too long in the sun. If she knew that being remembered isn't just about plaques and titles, it's about being missed when you're gone. It was the blazer that did it. The navy one, still wrapped in dry cleaning plastic, from the time I said, "I'll save it for something special." I bought it 2 years ago with a little bonus I wasn't expecting. Soft wool, smooth lapel, 3 buttons, modest but elegant. It hung in the back of my closet behind the church sweaters and the coat I wear when I rake leaves. I'd almost forgotten it was there. Almost. But after that email, the one that said, "Current staff only," I found myself standing in front of the closet, fingertips grazing its cover. What if, I thought, what if it wasn't personal? What if someone just forgot to add my name? I had been gone only 7 months. Retirement hadn't fully unspooled itself from my days yet. My old ID badge still worked at the side door. My coffee mug was still on the shelf, unless someone threw it out. Maybe they didn't mean to exclude me. Maybe I'd walk into the restaurant and someone, Jenna, even Paul, would see me and say, "Oh, thank God you came. We were just about to call you." That's what I told myself as I clipped the tags off a new pair of stockings and laid out the gold watch. My husband gave it to me when I was promoted to senior coordinator. For timing that matters, the card had said. It still worked. I'd kept the battery changed even after he passed. I wore it on interviews, on my last day of work, at the small luncheon they held in the break room, just the 4 of us, with a store-bought cake and paper plates. No one mentioned a retirement party then. They just handed me a mug with my name on it and said, "We'll miss you around here." I smiled. I said, "Thank you." I meant it. But I also waited for someone to follow up, to say, "We're planning something," or "We'll get everyone together properly." It never came, until the email. And even then, my hope lingered like steam on a bathroom mirror. The afternoon before the party, I called the restaurant. "Table for 1, please," I said, She asked if it was for a special occasion. I hesitated. Yes, I replied. It is. My name went on the reservation list. Mary Langford, no title, no department, just me. That night, I got ready the way I used to before staff galas. Slowly, deliberately. The kind of preparation that isn't for anyone's gaze, but your own dignity. The navy blazer fit just right. The watch caught the light as I fastened it to my wrist. I curled my hair at the edges. Nothing dramatic, just a soft wave to frame the face I've learned to accept with its lines and creases and soft, permanent sorrow. I arrived 10 minutes early. The hostess led me to a small table by the window. Across the hallway, I could already hear the hum of laughter. The party room was decorated with gold balloons and flickering candlelight. The kind of cheer that says, "We remembered everything." I ordered a glass of wine, white, crisp, the kind I used to pour into plastic cups at the staff picnics. The waiter, young, polite, handed me a menu. "Is anyone joining you?" he asked kindly. "No," I said, "just me." I sat for a moment, hands folded in my lap, and waited. Not for them to come out. I didn't expect that. I waited for something else. A feeling. A spark. Maybe the old sense of belonging to wash over me again. Instead, I heard a familiar laugh. Paul, the operations lead. Through the half-open door, I caught a glimpse of Jenna, cocktail in hand, head thrown back in laughter. No one looked toward my table. A balloon floated past the doorway and bobbed lazily against the frame. They were toasting. Someone clinked a glass and began a speech. I sipped my wine. I didn't strain to hear the words. I already knew I wouldn't be mentioned. That was the moment it settled. The soft, final drop of silence that told me they weren't going to remember. Not tonight. Not again. And somehow I wasn't surprised. Just still. I turned the watch on my wrist so the face sat snug against my pulse. Then I placed my napkin gently across my lap and looked out the window at the city lights blinking softly in the distance. Hope, I realized, isn't loud. It doesn't leave the room slamming doors. It folds itself into quiet places and lets go without sound. The menu was leather-bound, the kind that tries to make everything feel important. Heavy. Certain. Like choosing a dessert here was a declaration, not just a craving. I knew what I wanted before I sat down. Hazelnut ganache with gold-dusted chocolate shavings, the one I helped choose 6 years ago when we were planning the last gala. Back when the event was small enough that every detail still felt personal. They'd laughed at first. Hazelnut? That's too risky. But I stood my ground. People remember cake, I'd said. Let's give them something worth remembering. And they had. That year, there were compliments, empty plates, even a thank you note from the regional VP that I kept tucked inside my desk drawer. Now I sat across the hall from that memory, older, smaller, wearing the same scent I used to wear on meeting days. Lavender and citrus. Subtle. Forgotten. The waiter approached. "Would you like dessert?" "Yes," I said. "The hazelnut ganache." He smiled, jotting it down. "Celebrating anything special tonight?" I looked at him a long moment, trying to decide what would be more painful. The truth, or some soft lie I could tuck behind my smile. "I used to work here," I said, nodding toward the private room. "I helped design their menu once." "Oh?" He tilted his head. "Are you with the event?" "No," I said softly. "Just nearby." He paused, then nodded again. "Well, you made a good choice. That cake's still a favorite." Still, funny how that word cuts both ways. I watched him walk away, and something inside me folded. Not violently, not even sadly. Just inward. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was tired. Not the kind of tired a nap would fix. This was deeper, cellular, like my bones had finally decided there was no use in standing tall if no one saw it. 32 years, hundreds of mornings spent unlocking that office door before the sun even touched the parking lot. Afternoons filled with coffee runs, copier jams, late meetings I wasn't required to attend, but always did, just in case. And here I was. Same building, same face, but no longer useful, no longer necessary. I reached into my purse and pulled out the photo. The admin team huddled together around a too small cake in the break room. Back when promotions meant balloons and not just a line in an email. I looked at my own face in that photo, younger, tighter at the eyes, smiling in that hopeful way people do when they still believe effort will be rewarded. I tore it in half, carefully, not out of malice, just maintenance, like trimming a dead bloom from a flower. The two halves went back into my purse. Maybe I'd toss them later, maybe not. The cake arrived. It was perfect. Neat slice, sharp edge, a curl of chocolate balanced just so on the whipped cream. I took one bite. It tasted the same. And yet everything else, everything that made that flavor matter, had gone. I used to love this job, not for the pay, not for the recognition, but because it gave me a place, a purpose. I had a desk, a drawer with my name on it, people who said good morning and meant it. Now I had a table, for one. And even this act of reclaiming space felt hollow in its execution. I chewed, swallowed, sipped my wine. Not because I wanted to, but because the ritual was all I had left. Outside, the city lights blinked like indifferent stars. Laughter rose again from the party room. Louder this time. Someone must have made a joke. Maybe a toast. Maybe they were saying thank you to someone who still mattered. Someone who still had a badge. I reached for my napkin and caught my own reflection in the side mirror behind the bar. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't recognize her. Not because she was old, not because of the lines or the silver at her temples, but because she looked erased, faded, like ink left too long in the sun. I blinked, swallowed, set the fork down, not with anger, not with grief, just with the quiet understanding that I had given more than anyone remembered. And now there was nothing left to give but presence. He looked familiar, though I couldn't place him right away. He'd changed, broader shoulders, a trimmed beard, confidence in the way he moved. Not the nervousness of someone new, not quite the polish of someone seasoned. Something in between, like someone who'd been through enough to know when to stand still. He approached my table after clearing the one beside mine, smiling as he adjusted the water glass I hadn't touched. "I'm sorry," he said, hesitant. "You probably don't remember me, but you worked in the admin office, right? About 10 years ago?" I blinked. "Yes." He grinned then, wide and real. "I thought so. I was an intern, Chase. You helped me rewrite my resume. I was applying for that temp job in facilities. You stayed late to show me how to format it." The name clicked, and suddenly I could see him. 17, maybe 18, with crooked glasses and a tie too tight around his neck, typing with 2 fingers, and chewing his lip when he made mistakes. "I remember," I said, and I did. Not every detail, not every hour, but I remembered the way he stood by my desk, apologizing too much. I'd told him to stop that. He looked at me with something I hadn't seen all evening. Recognition. Respect. "You probably don't know this," he said, "but that job helped me get my first full-time gig. And from there, well, I'm still here." He gestured around the room, the soft lights, the linen napkins, the elegance that didn't quite feel like mine. "I'm running the floor tonight," he added, almost shy. "I saw your name on the reservation and thought, it can't be her. But here you are." I smiled, small, polite, but something shifted in my chest. Not warmth, not yet, but something, steadier, like the echo of a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Mine." "May I buy your dinner?" he asked gently. "A small thank you. For everything." I opened my mouth to decline. Habit. Then I paused, and I looked at him, this man who once was a boy, lost in spreadsheets and self-doubt, and I saw not what I had lost, but what I had left behind. Ripples, the quiet kind, the kind that take years to reach the shore. "No," I said finally, "but thank you." He nodded, didn't push. Then, just before turning, he said, "You were always kind, even when no one noticed." I never forgot that. He left, and I sat very still, not crying, not shaking, just feeling the weight of his words settle into the hollowness I thought was permanent. All these years, I'd told myself the work was thankless, that I was forgettable, erased. But here was a boy I barely remembered who carried my kindness like a torch through a decade. Maybe I hadn't been forgotten. Maybe I'd just stopped expecting to be remembered. From the party room, more laughter, more speeches. And yet, they felt smaller now. Not because they mattered less, but because I was no longer waiting for their validation to measure my worth. For the first time that night, I sat up a little straighter. I adjusted the collar of my blazer and touched the gold watch at my wrist. Still ticking. Still here. Still mine. Something had to change. I didn't know what yet. Not fully. Not in steps or actions or dramatic exits. But I knew this. I wouldn't let them write the end of my story in a room I wasn't invited to. Not anymore. I had carried it with me all evening. The envelope, soft at the corners, yellowed slightly from years in the bottom drawer of my writing desk. Inside, a photograph. No caption, just faces. 2 rows of them, in front of the building that used to have ivy on the side before the renovation stripped it bare. It was taken in '99, the year we hit our first million in contracts, the year we were too small for silos and too busy to be political. We were a team then. We stayed late. We ordered Chinese food and drank sparkling cider in paper cups. I stood dead center in that picture, smiling, holding the company mascot someone had knitted as a joke. I used to keep that photo pinned to my cubicle wall, then later taped inside my planner. I hadn't looked at it in years, but tonight I brought it. Not because I meant to do anything with it, just because. Now, with the waiter gone and the cake half eaten, I took the envelope out of my purse and laid it gently on the table. I slid the photo free, looked at it, studied each face. Some were long gone, to promotions, to parenthood, to better offers across town. Others I still passed in hallways. They barely nodded now, not out of rudeness, just momentum. And me? I was there, in the middle, holding everything together. Holding, always holding. I placed my fingers at the edge of the photo and slowly, gently, tore it in half. Right through my own image. No anger, no rush, just a careful, necessary separation. I folded the two halves, pressed them back into the envelope, and slipped it into my purse. Then I stood, not abruptly, not to make a point, but because I was done sitting at a table that felt like waiting. The hostess caught my eye. I nodded once, and she returned the gesture. I left a tip, generous, as always, and picked up my coat, but I didn't head for the door. I turned toward the far side of the restaurant, past the party room, where the laughter was louder now, buoyed by dessert and speeches and people who'd never noticed I wasn't there. And I stepped through the glass door that led to the balcony. It was empty. No one else wanted the view. The city stretched out beneath me, lit in soft, pulsing golds and silvers. Cars moved like silent thoughts. Windows blinked like slow heartbeats. The kind of view you only get when you stop rushing. I took one deep breath, the kind that fills you from the feet up, the kind that tells your body, I'm still here. I reached into my purse and pulled out the small glass I'd brought from the table. Just a few sips of wine left, crisp, clean. I raised it slowly. To the years they couldn't erase, I whispered. And I drank. Not all of it, just enough. Enough to mark the moment, to claim it. That toast, it wasn't for them. It wasn't to shame or provoke or ask to be seen. It was for me, to remember who I'd been, who I still was. Not the forgotten guest, not the left-behind admin, not the invisible extra, just Mary, the woman who stayed late, who carried things no one remembered needing, who mattered, even when they stopped saying so. The balcony was cool, even in August, not cold, just honest. The kind of cool that reminds you you're alive. Not with comfort, but with clarity. A breeze threaded through the hem of my blazer, brushing against the sleeve like a goodbye I could finally accept. I set the glass down on the ledge, empty now, and looked out over the city one more time. They were still laughing behind the wall. The party had reached that point where speeches had been made, names had been clapped for, and now people were sliding back into their own little circles. No one looked outside. No one noticed I'd gone. And that was fine. Truly, this time, it was. The door opened behind me. Footsteps. Light. Tentative. "Excuse me, ma'am," a voice said. I turned. It was the intern. Chase. Though I supposed he wasn't an intern anymore. He looked sheepish, holding something in his hands. His phone. "Do you mind if I take a picture?" he asked. "Just you, right here. You look, I don't know, you look like you're exactly where you're supposed to be." I raised an eyebrow, not unkindly. "Why?" He hesitated. "Because they forgot." But I didn't. I stood still for a moment, then nodded. He lifted the phone, stepped back slightly, and framed the shot. I didn't pose. I didn't smile. I just stood there in the blazer I saved for something special. My husband's watch catching the light. The skyline behind me, flickering like a new page waiting to be written. He tapped the screen. Click. "That's the one," he said softly. He asked if I wanted a copy. I shook my head. "No," I said. "It's yours." Then I turned back to the city. He lingered, like he wanted to say something more. But I didn't fill the silence, and eventually he walked away. I stayed another few minutes, long enough to breathe, to let the evening air thread through every tired place in my chest. Then I opened my purse and reached for the envelope, the one with the torn photo inside. I took it out, held it in both hands. I looked at the halves one last time. Not with sadness, not even nostalgia, but with the clean peace of someone finally done waiting to be remembered. Then I walked to the edge of the balcony and dropped it. The wind caught the envelope as it fell, not dramatically, not like in the movies, just a gentle descent, like something that had already let go. I walked back inside, past the party door one last time. No one looked up. Good. I didn't want them to. I didn't need them to. That moment, the one that mattered, had already passed. Out on the balcony, in the breeze, in the photograph he would post. Maybe it would go unnoticed. Maybe it would reach someone. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I hadn't vanished. I had just chosen a different room. I was up with the sun the next morning. Old habit. 32 years of beating the alarm clock by 10 minutes. Brewing coffee before the world stirred. Tying my scarf the same way I had since my first day. Only this morning, there was no scarf. No blouse with careful pleats. No keys dangling from my lanyard. Just a soft cotton robe, warm slippers, and the sound of birds I used to forget to notice. Outside, the hydrangeas needed watering. The porch had a new layer of pollen. The world was waiting, but not urgently. Not with deadlines, just gently. I walked out into the yard with my watering can, my knees slow but steady, the dew still fresh on the grass. The sky was the color of faded denim, soft, forgiving. The kind of morning that doesn't demand anything of you, just invites you to be part of it. I hadn't checked my phone, didn't need to. But when I came back in and wiped the dirt from my hands, I saw it on the kitchen table, blinking softly. A text, then two, then more. The intern, Chase, had posted the photo. Not with filters, not with fanfare. Just a single image. Me on the balcony, standing tall against the city skyline. My glass raised slightly, eyes fixed on something only I could see. The caption read, "The real legend of the office sat one table away. They forgot her. I won't." That was it. 12 words. But it traveled. It reached the people I used to work with, and people who never knew me. Comments began appearing, some from old colleagues, some from strangers. She helped me rewrite my resume. She stayed late when I had a family emergency. She taught me how to hold myself with grace. Each one like a candle relit. I didn't reply. I didn't repost it. I just smiled and turned off my phone. Let the world say what it wanted. I had said my piece, without words. Later that afternoon, I opened the box in the hallway closet. The one with the blue folder, the cards I kept, the pen Linda gave me, and the letter I'd never mailed. I took it all out, not to throw away, but to remember. Not what I'd lost, what I'd done, who I'd been. I laid each item on the table, ran my fingers across the edges, let the past be honored, not mourned. And then I made tea, Earl Grey, loose leaf, the good kind I always saved for guests. I poured one cup, sat by the window, and watched the breeze move through the trees like it had something to say. I didn't go back to that restaurant. I didn't return to the office or send an email or write a letter to HR. I didn't need to. Some endings don't require punctuation, just peace. And I had it. I had my name, my story, my choice. They booked the room. I booked my freedom.